Hey, welcome back to another edition of What You Reading. People ask me all the time, I assume as a professional writer, what I'm reading when I'm not writing. What do I read for entertainment, information, research, all the rest of it? And this is what I read recently. Michael Richards' autobiography, Entrance and Exits. And you probably know Michael Richards as Kramer on Seinfeld. Uh, but this book goes into a lot more. There's a lot of Seinfeld stories that are terrific in it, but it goes into basically his whole life. And I have to say, um, I've read a lot of celebrity autobiographies and biographies, and this one is the best one I've ever read. He really gets into his creative process. He's an excellent writer. This was not ghost written. In fact, Richards, in his afterward, says that his original manuscript was 600 pages long. This book is over 400 pages, uh, and they're obviously written by him. This is his voice, and he's an excellent writer, excellent storyteller, and he tells in a sort of an anti-structural way, tells the story of his life, going back and forth between the present, the run on Seinfeld, and his upbringing. And all of it's fascinating. This is a deeply thoughtful guy. He's not just a clown. He's not just a goofball, although he was expert at playing both. And but it goes into his career, and for me, the most interesting part of the book was the creative process of building and creating these characters, and the marvelous opportunity he was offered on the Seinfeld show of basically building Kramer from the ground up, adding little elements and little bits and pieces um, of himself, of people he had met, um, basically making this character come alive in his mind so it came alive in ours. And, you know, he starts out in his career early on uh, in the LA comedy club scene. It's a very dawn. I mean, he shows up at the very first comedy club to get a gig. That story's funny how he ends up getting on stage, and he gets drafted and he ends up in the army, and he ends up running a theater troupe in Germany rather than going to Vietnam, and then returns to LA for the comedy scene, but he kind of loses his taste for it. He realizes that it's bringing out a darker side of him, that the challenge of coming up with new material, because he never did a standard comic act as a stand up. He never just got up there and told jokes. He would get up there in a persona. And a lot of it was mood and a lot of physical comedy and things like that. And it was taking its toll on him, he felt mentally. And so he backed away from it and began to concentrate more and more on becoming an actor. He joined the cast of a Saturday Night Live knockoff that ran on ABC on Friday nights for a few seasons, and that's where he met Larry David, the co-creator of the Seinfeld show, for the first time. And Michael Richards got a lot of notice on this show for the recurring characters he played, most notably Battle Boy, where he played a child playing war in his backyard and getting way too into it. And he talks about how they had to bring in a half a ton of dirt to create the set for Battle Boy. And he also tells a hysterically funny story that I won't ruin here about a guest appearance on Miami Vice as a guy who um, fixes basketball games. And Michael Richards over and over again says that Kramer is not him, but his experience on Miami Vice is so Kramer. The story is hysterically funny. I won't ruin it for you, but it's just a terrific story about his disastrous. He eventually ended up in the show, but almost didn't. His disastrous first day on the set, and it's so Kramer that I gotta wonder, can't you see this? That so much of Cosmo Kramer came from you. He had other roles that stood out for moviegoers at the time. He was the serial killer pen pal in Problem Child, and I didn't know who he was as an actor. I didn't make the connection with Battle Boy on Fridays, but I just thought he was the highlight of this movie. He was the funniest thing in it. And of course, fans of Weird Al Yankovic will remember him from UHF, playing a clueless doofus as opposed to a hipster doofus that he would play later. And of course, Kramer. Um, he talks a lot about how he got the job, how Jerry Seinfeld from the very beginning wanted him, but Jerry knew enough about network executives not to say that. And so they auditioned any number of people, and a number of people were considered for this role, including Tony Shalhoub. But a number of people were considered for the role of Kramer, but Seinfeld always wanted Michael Richards, but was wise enough not to say that. And eventually, at the incredible audition that Kramer did for the character, Seinfeld said, "Well, I think this is the guy." And Brandon Tartikoff, head of NBC, turned to Seinfeld and said, "Well, if you want funny," and Seinfeld's like, Seinfeld in his foreword says this is where it opened his eyes to how detached from reality network executives were. It's a comedy show. Of course, I want funny. I want the funniest guy on earth to play Kramer, and this is who I want. And of course, they went through the many seasons, and he talks about all the things that happened to him on and off set. He didn't do a lot of stuff in hiatus. He did one disastrous movie that bombed. But generally, when he wasn't playing Kramer on hiatus, he would just travel. He'd travel all over the world. He was really into, although a lifelong Christian, he was really into studying alternate religions and how each religion related to one another, and how, in his mind, they all came from the same source. That's what I said. This guy's a deep thinker, but he's not a pretentious deep thinker. He's a traveler. He knows he's on a journey. He knows he doesn't have all the answers, and he talks about his curiosity about other cultures and things like that. So a lot of that made the book really interesting. The other thing that makes it interesting is the inevitable name dropper stories, where as he became more and more famous and was welcomed into the inner circle of Hollywood royalty, because people want to be with you when you're famous. Even famous people want to be with you when you're famous. He got to meet a lot of famous people. And there's another fantastic story that I won't spoil for you, but it involves him spending the afternoon with Jeff Goldblum and Peter Falk. And it involves a discussion about the O.J. Simpson trial. And it's amazing. It is just mind-blowing. And then his summation of the event is just so keenly insightful. I'm crazy about this book. I will reread it. I really like this book. I really like him. And, he talks about, the time on Seinfeld, how it was indelible. It was a golden moment. It was a golden opportunity, and a chance to do something special and create something special. And he talks about all the different scenes and basically the dangers of doing physical comedy. If you remember Seinfeld, Kramer does a lot of falls and a lot of physical stuff, and he got injured a few times. What I didn't know was how heavily padded he was under his outfit. He also picked out all his wardrobe himself, and he wore the same pair of shoes throughout the entire run of the show. He would wear one pair at rehearsal and the other pair when they went live, and they were identical to each other. And he picked out all his own clothes. He would go to secondhand clothing shops and thrift stores all over the place and to collect Kramer's vintage wardrobe of print shirts and out of date sport coats and things like that. And just really, really put himself into this, put everything he had into this character, and it shows. It's why he's one of the most endearing TV characters of all time. Why we remember him and all the rest of it. And he talks about obviously here it's a photo op, but it's the closeness of the cast, how they really became very close friends and family, and some of the funny stories, and how the cast members of Seinfeld were so perfectly cast because their characters really were an extension of who they were in real life. Except Michael Richards can't see how much of Kramer is him. uh, which I which is funny, which is funny. But you don't get distance from yourself in life. You can stand back and go, who is this guy? Why is he doing what he's doing? But just terrific stuff, terrific anecdotes, a terrific life journey. Some of it tragic, because he had a bit of a downfall. He was canceled early on. Before there was cancel culture, Michael Richards got himself canceled. And one thing he tells that I really regret even knowing about is that he was invited to appear in London on the stage, in the, the stage in West London, in a quite a long run of Arsenic and Old Lace, in which he took the Raymond Massey role, a role originally made famous by Boris Karloff on stage. And um, Richards talks about how he tried to capture what he thought the Karloff performance would be like. And I've seen pictures of him in makeup. Just I would have loved to have seen this play. It's a shame no one recorded it or taped it in any way. But he tells this really great story about how he was visited by Boris Karloff's daughter, and she came backstage to tell him how much she appreciated his performance. And then she spies up in the corner of his vanity mirror is a picture of her father. And it's just one of the many great moments from this book. But I highly recommend it if you like celebrity biographies or if you like reading about people involved in the creative process. Because actors, like writers, like directors, they are creators. They build these characters beyond the source material they're given, and this is a great book about that process from a very very skilled writer, a very skilled writer. So that's it. I will keep reading. You keep reading, and